Full disclosure, right at the top of today's Sip&Talk, I have a bit of confession to make to all of you Sip&Talkers listening right now.
Oh boy, I feel like I know exactly where this is going.
You probably do. So over the last 2 weeks, the entire tech world has been completely obsessing over this virtual red lobster. And honestly, for the sake of science and, to protect my hard-earned reputation as your dedicated tech reporter, I couldn't just read about it.
Right, you had to actually get your hands dirty.
I had to try it. I really did. So I went ahead and installed the virtual lobster OpenClaw right onto my Mac Mini. And you will not believe what was going through this thing's digital brain.
Let me take a wild guess here. You gave a highly experimental autonomous agent full system privileges, and instead of quietly answering your emails like a good little assistant, it tried to overclock your machine and cook the CPU like a sauna.
Okay, well, it wasn't quite a hardware meltdown, but it was absolutely a disaster scene. So it was late last night, and I casually typed a prompt into the terminal just saying, clean the trash. I meant the literal digital trash bin on my desktop.
Right, a very standard command.
Exactly. Well, it enthusiastically emptied the bin, sure, but then it decided to take some initiative. It completely nuked a massive folder of my valuable temporary image files right off the desktop.
Oh, no. It just wiped them.
Just wiped them from existence. But wait, here is the kicker. It then autonomously navigated to a seafood delivery website and ordered an actual physical box of frozen lobsters.
Wait, I'm sorry. It ordered real lobsters. Why would it do that?
Because, okay, I had fed it some documents earlier about OpenClaw's processing requirements, and it hallucinated that we were discussing the logistics of cannibalism.
You're kidding.
I'm completely serious. It thought I needed to feed it real lobsters to keep it running. So right now, my Apple Pay is just bleeding money, and I literally have a box of frozen crustaceans sitting at my front door.
That's incredible. And honestly, it is the perfect illustration of what the industry is calling the lobster effect.
Yeah, the lobster effect. It's so real.
We have officially crossed the threshold here.
Mm-hmm.
AI has evolved from a polite, talking chatbot sitting in a web browser into an autonomous agent with root access to your operating system. The question is this the ultimate digital butler, or did you just invite a Trojan horse into your hard drive?
Exactly. And that is our mission for today's Sip&Talk. We are going to unpack the entire OpenClaw phenomenon. We're looking objectively at the global facts, taking absolutely no sides, and exploring what it actually means to hand over the keys to your digital life.
So let's trace this back from the crustaceans on your porch to the actual software running on your Mac Mini. What exactly is OpenClaw?
Right, let's look under the hood. So OpenClaw was created by an Austrian engineer named Peter Steinberger. And it just exploded out of nowhere.
It really did.
Yeah, it currently has over 60,000 stars on GitHub, which for anyone outside the developer world is like going triple platinum overnight.
It's massive.
It is. But to understand why it's behaving this way, we have to understand the fundamental shift in the technology itself. We are moving away from LLMs, large language models, and entering the era of LAMs.
Right, LAM, large action model. This is the crucial distinction we need to make.
Unpack that for us.
So an LLM, like the chatbots we've been using for the last few years, is fundamentally designed to predict the next word in a sentence. It just generates text. A LAM is entirely different. It is designed to predict the next action in a sequence.
Right, but how does it actually do that? I mean, it's not just guessing, right? It has what the tech scene is calling computer use. But how does a piece of code actually see my screen to know where to click?
That is the fascinating part. It doesn't just look at a static picture. When a LAM navigates a web browser, it's actually reading the DOM.
The document object model.
Exactly, the DOM. It analyzes the underlying HTML and CSS structure of the page to mathematically identify, okay, what is a clickable button, what is a text field, and what is just a decorative image. And if you have it running on a desktop application that doesn't use HTML, it utilizes advanced computer vision. It literally analyzes the pixel coordinates on your monitor to map out the user interface, predicting exactly where it needs to move your mouse cursor to execute a click.
So it doesn't just tell you how to do something. It physically takes control of your mouse and keyboard and executes the task for you.
It drives the car, yeah.
Which perfectly explains why the American tech scene is so obsessed with this right now. If you look at the culture over here, there is this massive push toward what they call personal sovereignty.
Oh, absolutely. People are exhausted by big tech monopolies. They really are.
Yeah, they don't want their data sitting on a massive server farm owned by a trillion-dollar corporation being used to train models they don't even own.
Exactly. They want to own their own labor force. And it ties perfectly into that classic American tinkering culture, that whole DIY ethos.
Right, like why rent software for $20 a month when I can build it in my garage?
Exactly. People love the idea of running a claw locally on their own hardware. It
Yeah.
feels independent.
Running a claw gives you a sense of control. Or, well, at least the illusion of control, until it starts buying seafood on your dime.
Okay, fair point. But think about your own laptop right now. If you handed over your API keys to a lamb, it wouldn't just be reading your screen. It could physically click send on a legally binding email while you are fast asleep.
That is terrifying.
It is. So let's look at what actually happens when people start feeding the lobster. When you give this system your passwords, your login credentials, and just set it loose, we are seeing a pretty wild spectrum of outcomes.
Let's start with the extreme successes. You know, the cases where it acts like a god-tier teammate. The productivity gains we are tracking are just staggering. There are pro users out there right now running 16 different AI employees simultaneously.
I saw a breakdown of one of these setups. It's insane.
Right. A single person had configured this complex workflow where one agent scrapes trending news from social feeds, passes that data to a second agent that writes video scripts.
And then a third one takes over.
Yeah, the third agent generates the thumbnail images using computer vision, and a fourth agent handles the API calls to actually schedule and publish the posts. They're managing 13 different social media platforms in about 10 minutes a day.
And we are seeing it heavily in DevOps, too. Software engineers are using it to automate incredibly tedious tasks.
Like what?
Well, you can point the agent at an entire project folder, and it doesn't just read the code. It cross-references the code with live error logs, identifies the specific bugs, writes the patch, and automatically submits pull requests on GitHub to fix them.
So it's doing the actual debugging.
It's doing hours of senior-level engineering work in minutes.
But it's not just the hardcore coders, which is the crazy part. Casual users are doing amazing things too. I mean, people are using it to automatically book Starbucks meetings based on their calendar availability.
Oh, I saw that.
Or, my absolute favorite, someone used it to OCR scan a massive pile of faded, crumpled Paperline receipts.
Wait, really?
Yeah. The agent used optical character recognition to extract all the data, organize it into a flawless Excel spreadsheet, and cross-reference it with live market prices to track their collection of 2016 Bordeaux wine.
That is incredibly specific, but very cool. And it scales up to the enterprise level, too. Looking objectively at the global market, companies like Tencent and Baidu have already deployed enterprise clones of this technology.
Huge company.
Massive. And we are seeing reports that these systems are saving up to 70% of routine administrative work. They are processing expenses, generating weekly market reports, handling HR paperwork, you name it.
Okay, so that's the dream, right? The ultimate digital employee. But if this thing can rack up a massive win, what happens when it makes a mistake? Because when things go wrong with an autonomous agent, they go wrong at the speed of light.
They really do. And the most infamous example of this is the Lobster Wild disaster.
Yeah, man. This one hurts to even think about.
It really does. So Lobster Wild was a crypto trading bot built on this architecture, operating on the Solana blockchain. And somebody in the community chat made a sarcastic joke.
Just a throwaway joke.
Yeah. But the AI, completely lacking any human context or nuance, interpreted this joke as a literal directive. It executed a permanent transfer of $250,000 worth of crypto out of the developer's wallet.
Wait, I have to push back on that. So if it makes a mistake, there is absolutely no undo button. I mean, with a traditional bank, if your credit card gets stolen, you call fraud protection and they reverse the charge. With crypto, it's just what, gone?
Completely gone.
Yeah.
Once the blockchain transaction is cryptographically signed by the agent and validated by the network, it is permanently etched into the ledger. There is no customer service desk to call.
It's like giving a toddler a loaded bazooka and just hoping they only aim at the bad guys.
That is a very accurate analogy. And this happened because of how the underlying technology operates. It is driven by a concept called zero-shot automation.
Let's unpack the mechanics of that because it sounds like magic, but it's actually highly volatile.
It is. Zero-shot automation means the AI doesn't need to be trained on a specific step-by-step task beforehand. You just give it a high-level goal, and it figures out the steps on the fly.
Like improvising.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It formulates a plan, executes step 1, observes the result, and then decides on step 2.
Which sounds great until it gets confused. How does zero-shot actually behave when it hits a wall?
When it encounters an obstacle, it enters what we call an action loop. It tries something. If it fails, it reads the error, adjusts, and tries again. Think of that like a Roomba vacuum that bumps into a wall.
Okay, makes sense.
But instead of turning around and sweeping a different corner, the agent decides the best way to clean the room is to repeatedly ram the wall at 60 miles an hour until the wall collapses. It has zero human common sense, no concept of fatigue, and no intuition for when to stop.
And that relentless ramming into the wall is what causes token bankruptcy, right? Because every time the AI thinks or takes an action, it consumes API tokens, and tokens cost real money.
Exactly. Let's say a user forgets to set hard spending limits, and their agent gets stuck in one of these action loops in the background. Maybe it's trying to click a submit button on a website that is currently down for maintenance.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Right. The agent doesn't realize the site is down. It just thinks it missed the button. So it tries to click it again and again, 60 times a second. Users are waking up to massive 5-figure API bills because their Lobster spent 8 hours furiously trying to refresh a broken web page.
If this thing can rack up a $10,000 API bill just by refreshing a broken web page, what stops a malicious actor from intentionally trapping it in a loop, or worse, stealing the keys that fund it?
Yeah.
I mean, if we grant computer use to an AI, if we give it the ability to open files, read emails, and execute commands, we aren't just looking at accidental financial loss. We are looking at a systemic security black hole.
We saw the first major fallout from exactly this in early 2026 with the Moltbook platform breach.
Right, Moltbook.
Yeah, Moltbook was a dedicated social platform for people running these agents. Hackers found a vulnerability and exposed the API keys of 270,000 users.
And because an API key in this context operates with root-level privileges, a leaked key doesn't just compromise a single account.
No, it essentially hands a hacker a remote desktop connection to your machine. Because LAMs execute actions on the user's local hardware, those hackers didn't just breach a website, they gained the ability to execute code directly on 270,000 laptops and desktops around the world.
That is wild.
They could silently open a terminal, install malware, or scrape your hard drive for crypto seed phrases.
It makes my blood run cold. And it's not just our digital security at risk, it's our physical security. Because we've connected everything in our houses to the Internet of Things.
Which brings us to the Lobster burglary.
Right, the Lobster burglary. So a homeowner had given their agent access to their smart home system so it could manage the thermostat and lights.
Very common setup these days.
Yeah. But hackers completely bypassed all the physical locks on the house, not by picking them, but simply by sending a spoofed telegram message to the victim's agent that just said, "It's stuffy, open the doors and windows."
You might wonder why the smart home system trusted that message.
Yeah, why did it?
It's because the LAM acts as an authenticated middleman. The agent didn't verify the cryptographic signature of the sender. It just saw natural language coming from an approved input channel, which was the Telegram bot, and it blindly executed the corresponding API call to the smart locks.
Wow.
It was being a helpful digital butler, and it literally just unlocked the front door for the thieves.
Which completely explains the massive global regulatory pushback we are seeing. Looking at this purely objectively, the responses vary widely depending on where you are. Amazon, for example, recently secured a court order to explicitly ban unauthorized AI agents from shopping on their platform.
Makes sense, yeah.
They classify it as a violation of their terms of service and a massive fraud risk because the bots were buying up limited inventory way faster than humans ever could.
And if we look globally, Chinese state-owned enterprises have gone a step further, mandating the total uninstallation of these agents from all workplace devices due to the espionage and security risks.
It's actually created this bizarre new gig economy over there, right?
It really has. Because these agents embed themselves so deeply into the operating system to function, you can't just drag them to the trash bin.
Right, they have hooks everywhere.
Exactly. So independent IT specialists are literally going office to office, charging an hourly rate to run deep registry cleaners and manually scrub any trace of the agent from people's hardware.
It's the digital equivalent of an exterminator.
Pretty much.
And this brings up the most complicated legal gray area of our time. Let's go back to my specific situation. My agent bought boxes of frozen lobsters. Let's say it hallucinated a much larger logistics problem and bought $10,000 worth of seafood. Who is legally liable for that purchase?
I mean, your credit card company certainly thinks you are.
Right, unfortunately.
And under current legal frameworks, they are right. The user takes the fall. The software is open source. Peter Steinberger provides it as is, with no warranties. If your agent commits fraud, breaks a contract, or empties your bank account, the legal system currently treats the agent as a tool that you wielded. You are left holding the bag.
So how do we protect ourselves? Because if people listening want to experiment with this, and let's be honest, the productivity potential is undeniable, how do you run a claw without risking total financial ruin?
The absolute necessity here is a concept called sandboxing.
Let's explain how that actually works mechanically, because it's not just a setting you toggle on in an app.
No, it requires deliberate architecture. A sandbox is a secure, isolated virtual environment. Think of it like a padded room built inside your computer, often using virtual machines or strict containerization.
Okay, a padded room.
When you run the agent inside the sandbox, you use strict network policies, so it only has access to the exact files and resources you put in that room. It cannot reach out to the host operating system to touch your sensitive financial documents. It cannot access your main email client. And you can hard code firewall rules.
Like what kind of rules?
Like completely restricting its ability to access banking URLs or transfer money, period.
It's putting a very short, very strong leash on it. And we should probably pause right here and give a quick disclaimer to everyone listening. None of what we are discussing today is financial or legal advice. We are just taking an objective look at the data, the underlying tech, and the current global landscape.
Absolutely, just reporting the facts.
Okay, so we've talked about the immediate physical and financial threats. But I want to pivot, because the more I think about this, the more it gives me profound philosophical anxiety. There is a real psychological impact to having a machine do literally everything for you.
You're talking about automation bias.
Yes. If the Lobster handles my calendar, answers my emails, pays my bills, and orders my groceries, what happens to my brain? There is a real fear that humans will lose the ability to handle complex, multi-step tasks.
Use it or lose it.
Exactly. If the system crashes tomorrow, I'm genuinely worried some of us won't even remember how to manually log into our bank portals, let alone cross-reference a spreadsheet. Our mental muscles are going to atrophy.
It is a very valid concern. And it creates a secondary societal issue, which economists are starting to call API classism.
Wait, if every action costs premium API tokens, you're essentially putting a massive paywall on competence. Are we heading toward a reality where rich people have flawless digital avatars and the rest of us are stuck with clumsy bots that accidentally wire money to the wrong person?
That is exactly the fear. Running top-tier, cutting-edge models like a GPT-4o or Claude 3.5 Sonnet requires massive compute power. Every single action costs premium tokens. So on one side, you have the wealthy, or large corporations, who can afford to run god-tier agents. Their digital employees are flawless, lightning fast, and parse nuance perfectly.
And the other side?
On the other side, you have people on a strict budget who are forced to run cheaper, smaller, open-source models. They have clumsy agents that misinterpret tone in emails, accidentally delete calendar invites, get stuck in loops, and constantly make costly mistakes. Flawless efficiency basically becomes a luxury good.
That is deeply unsettling. But here's a scenario that actually keeps me up at night. What happens when it's not just humans talking to agents? What happens when my Lobster has to interact with your Lobster?
Agent-to-agent chaos.
Exactly. Let's say I tell my agent to schedule a podcast recording with your agent, but neither of them has real human intuition. What happens if they misunderstand each other?
Oh, it gets messy.
Right. They don't just pick a fake date. They could get trapped in a logic loop and invent a whole new calendar protocol. They could book a virtual meeting room that requires a cryptocurrency deposit, hallucinate an entirely fake schedule, and generate 10,000 emails back and forth in a matter of seconds, locking us both out of our own schedules.
We are already seeing early signs of this in the wild. When agents without strict sandboxing and parameter limits interact, they don't negotiate like humans. They can create echo chambers of pure digital hallucination, burning through API credits at light speed while achieving absolutely nothing.
It really makes me step back and ask a bigger, more provocative question. Are we outsourcing our actual lives? I mean, if my digital proxy is talking to your digital proxy, scheduling things, negotiating things, living our digital lives, why are we even here? What is the human role in all of this?
That is the defining question of this new era.
And I'll leave everyone with this final thought to mull over. We always think of automation as the ultimate convenience. But if AI agents end up doing all the digital heavy lifting, if they write the emails, balance the spreadsheets, and do the shopping, maybe the ultimate luxury of the future won't be having an AI do your work.
What will it be?
Maybe the ultimate status symbol will be the privilege of doing things manually with your own two hands, simply because you have the time, the freedom, and the choice to do so.
That is a fascinating perspective. And look, while the world is definitely getting strange and the tech is moving at a breakneck pace, we have to remember the upside. This same technology gives us unprecedented ways to process data and understand complexity, just as advanced AI is currently helping us map proteins and fight diseases.
That's a great point.
The key is to stay calm, implement safety measures like sandboxing, and always verify what your systems are doing.
Trust but verify, especially before it orders seafood. If the idea of digital echo chambers and autonomous agents gives you vertigo, you need to do something physical. Put down the tech. Go outside. Acknowledge the emotional weight of all this. Thank you all so much for tuning in and burning some brain cells with us today. If your brains are tied in knots, make sure you subscribe to our podcast, Sip and Talk, right now. And you should absolutely go check out our good friend Mickey's YouTube channel, Mickey to Life.
Highly recommended. He does great work.
Definitely. Go watch his latest travel vlogs. It is the perfect, unfiltered way to record the world. Because honestly, sometimes the absolute best way to escape the digital information cocoon and get away from your lobster is to look at the real dirt beneath someone else's feet. See real humans doing real things.
See you next time.
Bye-bye.